89 years old, and I realized too late that I was waiting for a life that never came. I say that plainly because there's no way to make it sound softer without lying. Most mornings, I wake up before the sun is fully up. My body does that now, whether I want it to or not. The room is quiet, the kind of quiet that feels normal until you remember it didn't used to be. I sit on the edge of the bed and wait for my legs to agree to the day. Then I shuffle to the window and look out at the street. I watch people walk dogs, start cars, leave for places that still need them. I don't know most of their names. They don't know mine. I've lived long enough that the world has replaced itself around me. Stores change, neighbors move, couples become parents, parents become old, and you're still in the same chair watching, thinking there will be a moment when you step into your real life. That moment never came for me. Not because I was unlucky, not because life was cruel, because I kept postponing it. I kept waiting until the conditions were perfect, until I was ready, until I had more money, more confidence, more time, and the years kept going anyway. I'm telling you this for one reason, not for pity, not for applause. I don't want either. I'm telling you because when you get to my age, you don't have many chances to tell the truth while you're still here to tell it. People have a way of talking about old age like it's just slow afternoons and memories. It isn't that gentle. Old age is also receipts. Old age is the final total, the number at the bottom of the page. And you can't return anything. My hands are thin now. My voice gets tired. My hearing comes and goes. Some days I forget words I've known my whole life. I can feel my life narrowing. I can feel the end of it, not in a dramatic way. Just in the way you feel winter coming. The air changes. And the strange part is I don't regret the big disasters. I didn't have many. I stayed out of trouble. I paid my bills. I worked. I did what I was supposed to do. I was responsible. That's what makes it harder to talk about. Because from the outside, my life looks fine, neat, orderly. But if you look closer, you can see the empty spaces where a life should have been lived. When I was young, I used to say things like, one day I'll travel. One day I'll fall in love properly. One day I'll take up painting or music or whatever it was that I thought would make me feel like a person instead of a worker. I said one day, the way people say grace before meals, like saying it would make it real. What I didn't understand is that one day is not a day on the calendar. It's just a word that lets you delay your own life. I grew up in a small house with two parents who did their best and were tired most of the time. My father worked hard. My mother kept everything together with routines and stubbornness. There wasn't a lot of softness in our home. Not because there wasn't love, because there wasn't time for it. When I was a boy, I watched my parents worry about money like it was a third person living with us. Bills on the table. My father's quiet anger when the car didn't start. My mother counting coins before she went to the store. I learned early that security mattered, that stability mattered, that if you could get yourself into a safe life, you should do it and not complain. So, that's what I chased. I wasn't chasing joy. I was chasing not being afraid. In my 20s, I got a job that looked solid, nothing glamorous. Office work, a desk, a time card, a paycheck that came regularly. It felt like a miracle. I put on a tie every morning and walked into that building like I was stepping into adulthood. People around me were building lives, marrying, having children, buying houses they couldn't really afford yet. They seemed to be moving forward while I stood at the edge watching. It wasn't that I didn't want those things. I did. I just told myself I wasn't ready. I had a picture in my head of the kind of man who deserves a family. He should have enough money. He should be confident. He should have his career figured out. He should know who he is. I thought I was supposed to arrive at some finished version of myself before I could let anyone close. So when I met women I liked, I hesitated. I kept it polite. I kept it safe. There was a woman named Helen when I was 27. She worked in the same building a few floors down. She wore simple clothes and had a laugh that came out suddenly, like she surprised herself. We used to walk to the bus stop together. She invited me to her sister's wedding. Just as a guest, nothing heavy. I remember the way she asked, like she was offering me a warm place to stand for a day. I told her I was busy. I wasn't busy, not really. I was scared. I was scared that if I went, it would mean something, that it would start something, and I didn't trust myself to finish anything. I didn't trust myself to be enough. A few months later, she started seeing someone else, then she got married. I saw her once in the lobby, years later, with a wedding ring and a tired smile. She said it was good to see me. I said the same. Then she walked away, and I stood there feeling something I didn't have a name for. That became a pattern, not with Helen, but with life. Opportunities would come close, and I would step back just far enough to keep from being changed by them. I kept thinking that being cautious was being wise. I told myself, once I get promoted, I'll relax. Once I get my own place, I'll start living. Once I pay off this loan, I'll take that trip. Once I feel more confident, I'll date seriously. Once. And the truth is, there was always another once behind it, like a door that led to another door. In my 30s, I moved into a better apartment. I bought furniture that matched. I had a little kitchen table. I had clean towels. It looked like a life. It felt like a waiting room. I worked more. I saved more. I said no to invitations because I was tired. I turned down weekend trips because I was behind. I avoided parties because I didn't want to answer questions about my personal life. It was easier to be the quiet man who worked hard than the man who had to admit he didn't know how to belong to anyone. My friends started to thin out, not in an angry way, in a natural way. They had kids' birthdays and school events and family dinners. They had lives built around people. I was built around schedules. I remember getting invited to a barbecue when I was 38. A co-worker's house. His wife had made potato salad. Kids were running in the yard. Someone handed me a plate and a drink. I stood by the fence and watched them laugh, and I felt like I was watching television. A woman tried to talk to me. She asked where I was from. I answered politely. She asked if I had kids. I said no. She asked if I was married. I said no. She said, "Oh, well, you've got time." I smiled and nodded because what else do you do with that sentence? I had time, I thought. I had plenty of it. That's what 38 feels like. It feels like a long road. Now I know time isn't just years. Time is chances. Time is energy. Time is the ability to start over without it costing you everything. You don't get unlimited chances. You just get the illusion of them while you're young. My 40s came and went, and I didn't notice it as a decade. It felt like a string of Mondays. My parents got older. My father's back started to bend. My mother's hands started to shake. I visited more, not because I suddenly became sentimental, but because it felt like duty. I was good at duty. When my father died, it was quiet. He had been ill. It wasn't a shock. I stood in the hospital room and watched the life leave him, and I thought, there it goes. That's it. After the funeral, I went back to my apartment and sat in the same chair I always sat in. The silence felt heavier, not because I missed him in a dramatic way, because I realized something was now closed forever. My father never really knew me as an adult. He knew my job. He knew I was doing fine. He didn't know what I wanted. He didn't know I was lonely. He didn't know I was waiting for my life to begin. And I didn't tell him. It wasn't his fault. It was mine. I didn't know how to talk about those things. I didn't know how to admit that I was scared. After he died, I had a thought that came and went quickly, and I wish it had stayed long enough to change me. The thought was, if life can end like that, maybe I should stop waiting. But then I went back to work, and the thought faded like everything else. That's how the slow cost works. It isn't one big mistake. It's 1,000 small delays that feel harmless. A canceled plan, a phone call you don't return, a trip you postpone, a person you don't ask out because you don't feel ready. You don't feel the weight of those things in the moment. You feel it later when you can't remember why you waited so long. In my 50s, I finally took a trip, just a small one, a week in a place I had always said I wanted to see. I went alone. I told myself it was freedom, that I could do what I wanted, that I didn't have to compromise. And there were moments when it was nice. I ate where I wanted. I walked when I wanted. I sat in a museum as long as I liked without someone checking their watch. But at night, in the hotel room, I would turn on the television just to hear voices. I would lie in the bed and feel the emptiness beside me like a physical thing. I realized something then that I didn't want to admit. The life I had built was quiet in a way that didn't heal. It just echoed. When I retired, I thought that would be the beginning. That's what people told me. Now you can finally live. I believed them. Retirement for me wasn't a celebration. It was a sudden lack of structure. The days stretched out. My coworkers disappeared quickly, not out of cruelty, but because that's what happens. You are part of a machine until you're not, and the machine keeps moving. I tried to fill the days. I cleaned, I organized, I watched the news, I went for walks, but I had built my whole identity around being responsible and busy. Without that, I didn't know who I was, and that's when the truth started creeping in. I was 72 when I first admitted to myself quietly that I might have waited too long, not for a job, not for money, for connection, for love, for a family, for the kind of life where someone else notices if you don't come home. I started going to community events. I sat in rooms with people my age and listened to them talk about their grandchildren, their spouses, their anniversaries. I smiled at the right times. I nodded. I went home and sat in my apartment and felt like I had missed the train. Not because everyone else had perfect lives. They didn't. They had divorces and regrets and grief. But they had lived with other people. They had been known. I had been efficient. I had been careful. I had been alone. The turning point for me wasn't a grand tragedy. It was a small medical scare, a fall in the bathroom, nothing dramatic. I bruised my ribs. I couldn't get up easily. I sat on the floor for a while, catching my breath, feeling embarrassed. When I finally got up, I looked around my apartment and realized something that chilled me. If I had hit my head, if I had broken something, if I had just not been able to get up, no one would have known for days, not because nobody cared. Because I hadn't built a life where anyone was close enough to notice. That was the moment the waiting stopped feeling like a harmless habit. It started feeling like a choice I had made, over and over, until it became the only way I knew how to live. Now I'm 89, and I can say it without arguing with myself. The life I was waiting for wasn't going to arrive like a package. It wasn't going to knock on the door when I was finally ready. Life doesn't wait for readiness. It just keeps moving. I can't go back to Helen and say yes to that wedding invitation. I can't go back to my 30s and accept the awkwardness of being young and unsure and still showing up. I can't go back and build a family from scratch. Not at this age, not with this body, not with this time. What's gone is gone, not in a dramatic way, in a simple, final way. I do have good memories. I don't want to pretend I lived in darkness. I had small joys, books that moved me, music, long walks on crisp mornings, kind conversations with strangers, the quiet satisfaction of paying my bills on time, of keeping my place clean, of being someone people could rely on at work. But there's a difference between a life filled with moments and a life shared, and that's what I missed. I missed being part of someone else's ordinary day. If you're listening to me and you're younger, I won't tell you what to do. I don't know your life. I don't know what you're carrying. I don't know what you're afraid of. I'll just tell you what waiting feels like from where I'm sitting now. It feels reasonable in the beginning. It feels responsible. It feels like you're being smart, and then quietly, it becomes your whole life. You start thinking of yourself as someone who will live later. Later becomes a habit. Later becomes a personality. Then one day you realize you've been preparing for a life instead of living it. You don't need to rush. I'm not saying that. Rushing can ruin things too. But don't confuse caution with living. Don't confuse preparation with participation. Sometimes the messy, imperfect version of your life is the real one. Sometimes that's all you get. If this meant something to you and you feel like sharing a thought, I'd read it if I could. Not because I need company, just because it helps to know we're not the only ones who have waited for the wrong things. As for me, I'm not asking for a second life. I don't think life works that way. I'm just trying to be honest in the one I have left. I still wake up early. I still look out the window. I still watch people moving through their days, carrying bags, holding hands, arguing softly, laughing. I don't envy them the way I used to. I just notice how alive it all is. And when the sun shifts and the room warms up, I sit in my chair and try to stop waiting for anything at all. Because at 89, the only thing that's still mine is the day in front of me, and even that feels like it's on loan.